Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Casual Friday. It's T-shirt day. Happy Casual Friday and happy Friday in general. A good end to a good week. And I hope you all are having a lovely day. Let's see here. Nobody was talking in chat, so I was like, hello. Kariniko, Otter Mama, hello. Inara, hello. Arrow is hello. Stephanie and M. Groening and Twisted Oma and Numbat and Declearman and Mist Imp. And Suprigo, you're new. Or are you new? Are you new? I like seeing all these new names. We're getting a lot of new names recently, and I really like that. Isn't it cool, Justin?
Definitely. Yeah, sorry, I had someone ring the doorbell, so my dog was going nuts.
Okay. That's Disembodied Voices Justin, new people. Just so you know, Justin does all of our video production for Reaper. I should really have a little disembodied voice attribution for him on the screen. Hey, thanks, Arrowiz. Thanks for that 5-month. Good morning, Daffod Weir. Yes, Reaper Peepers indeed. Happy Friday, Kroniko. Hi, Jay. Good, everybody's up. Hey, Jandercleese, haven't seen you for a while. And Chewy Boots. You've been around for... Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, time zones, yes. Yes, the time zone thing. We have people from all over the world who watch, but some of my patrons in Asia can't watch very often. I'll tell you that. JJ Beard, Purple Hearts, awesome. I appreciate it. Pearl Jam, nice to see you. And Muse's Touch, you're lurking so you can't be on chat. That's okay. At least you're here. We're going to have an interesting day, I think. An interesting day. Hey, Crispies. Good to see you. You've been lurking. All right. Lurking is totally okay. It's all right. Oh, yeah. I had to come back for the spots, for sure. Yes, we're into spots today. We're also going to talk about muted colors and saturated colors a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about my color scheme and how I can be more efficient with my paint. Because I have too many colors open on my palette and I don't need them all. So we're going to talk about that. And I got my new kneeling chair yesterday, so I had to reset up my setup, and we'll see how it does. So far, it's a rocking chair, so I can actually rock on it, which is kind of weird. But essentially, the point of the rocking kneeling chair is that you engage your core muscles better. So that is one of the pluses. So we'll see how it does for the show. It's a little taller than I'm used to, so I'm curious as to whether I'll be able to keep good posture or if I'll have to raise my work area up a little bit. Maybe just put a box under it. So we'll see. Hey, Coobs. Yeah, I've never tried a kneeling chair until David made me try his, and then it really did help my back. I kept better posture in it. I found it was easier, and it helped my legs too. Like I was getting some lower leg stiffness, and it really helps with that too. Oh, yay. Yeah, somebody got you a gift sub. That's awesome, Wakeface. Awesome. Well, let's go to Spirit Beast and start talking so that we can get our butts in gear. I guess I do need to look up a spots reference real quick. Though we are going to do some base coating, just a tiny bit of base coating. So let's see here. Leopard spots. Somebody wanted me to do snow leopard. So snow leopard. Although leopard spots are pretty much, very similar. I believe that the snow leopard spots are more rosettes. Let's see here. Let's find a good picture of snow leopard spots. In Google search and images is, of course, your best resource. And then just try to find a picture that shows you how the spots look. Well, these spots are okay. So snow leopard spots, actually, let's get our camera where we need to. Look like that. So they are rosettes, and rosettes are where you have a black line around the edge, which is often broken up, and then you have a darker area in the middle with the ground color of the spots on the outside, and you sometimes also have smaller pure black spots. And the spots, are irregular, and usually, though, you can see, if you look, that they kind of run in lines. Like there's a line, there's a line. Once you realize this about leopard spots, it's a lot easier to kind of line them up on the animal. Because, here, let me show you. So here you can see that there's an irregular line of spots doing that. And then under it, there's another irregular line of spots. And here, there's another irregular line of spots. So when you're looking at an animal with a pattern like this, look for the pattern in the pattern. So here, you can see there's a line of spots here, 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 and here. And it's interrupted here and there. But in general, you can plan your spot pattern that way, and it will make it look correct to do it. So keep that in mind when you are doing leopards. And I guess maybe we'll steal that particular leopard photo. And I'm looking for a big one. Just kind of look around for your snow leopards and find a spot pattern you like. That guy's a big guy, big floofy guy. He's got a lot of big dark spots. Also notice how the rosettes go into normal spotting down here and how the fur lightens toward the belly. Like they're actually more of a creamy beige color up top, or a gray, like this guy is more gray. And then as they go down further on the animal, these rosettes turn into black spots and they get a lot lighter. So if you've got gray, you've usually got a creamy transition and then a white underbelly with that sort of thing going on. So that is what we are going to do today. Any mini's a good mini, Crispies. Yeah, there's a pattern to their non-pattern because genetics, Twistedoma. So yeah, you could always grab a saber-toothed tiger. You could do it on anything, though. I mean, I shouldn't be putting leopard spots on this dog, on this spirit beast. I should probably be putting horse Appaloosa spots. I don't care. You know, put it on anything. Put it on a unicorn. Put it on a Pegasus. Put it on whatever. It doesn't matter. It'll just look cool. Any mythical creature is fair game. All right. So let's talk about... I'll leave the leopard pictures open on my phone so that I can draw upon them. In the meantime, let's talk about our colors that we were using. So you guys who were here yesterday, remember we were doing some really weird stuff because I was looking at like light greens, like Phantom Glow essentially was the color I reached for when somebody said Phantom Spectral. And then somebody yelled out Runic Glow. So essentially we are actually using 2 of the glow colors from the Kickstarter set, which is awesome. These are great colors. They're very useful, and I recommend all of them. Red Neon Glow is the one we are not using currently, which is an orangey pink, pinky orange, I guess, which is also a very cool color. But what I realized yesterday, oh yeah, do it on a griffin. Yeah, the griffins have had like tiger stripes or leopard spots for a very long time. It's a tradition in griffins. All right, so what I realized yesterday, though, is that I decided to go lighter, right? When you looked at these, I said you could use them as a triad. This is your Spectral Glow as your midtone, your Mint Green as your highlight, and then this is Xantia Jade from the Pathfinder line, which makes a great shadow for these guys. And so when you see the more vivid greens here, that's what that is. So... But what I realized in looking at this, and this is often the case in a triad that is very similar, is that I don't really need this glow color. I could just mix these two. Like, they're pretty close. Like, I might warm it up a tiny bit, but since I'm already using this for shading, it isn't going to hurt anything. And what I realized yesterday is I wasn't often using the straight up Phantom Glow. I was more often using this and then just shading with that. And this is the case if you're using any sort of washes. Like I did very lightweight washes to bring out the fur texture a little bit more on him. Let me get him... Make sure he's in focus. Focus, focus, focus. Focus. But you can see how the wash spread out the fur texture. And I localized the wash. I didn't put it over everything. I put it where I wanted the fur texture. But when you're doing any washes, you want to start lighter rather than darker. If you start with a medium color and put a dark wash over it, you're not going to see a lot of the texture. It's going to be more subtle because you're not starting light. So if you want a very stark wash... texture, then start very light and shade it darker. Now it will change the color you get, of course, but yeah. So we're mostly starting with mint green, shading with that. So I'm just going to drop Phantom Glow right out, put it back in my drawer. Sorry, Phantom Glow, because I want less colors open on my palette. Same thing is true here. Clear Magenta and Runic Glow. Runic Glow does have a little blue in it, where Magenta does not. But what I found is that yesterday I never touched my Runic Glow. I touched my Magenta because mixing the Magenta and the Jade gave me this great bluish color. So I can also drop Runic Glow right out because I can get very close to it by just mixing Clear Magenta and white. And since I wasn't touching this yesterday or using it, I'm like, well, bye Runic Glow. So even though we based this color scheme on the glow colors, we are not actually going to use them. We're going to use their lighter and darker cousins, which leaves us with only 3 paints to be open on our palette, plus white. Now, we may need to do some darker colors at some point. Obviously, we don't want to make the Spirit Beast necessarily all the same color. We certainly could. We can mix, obviously we've got a blue in there that we could utilize by mixing these two colors. So it's not all green and pink. But I might also want like a darker color for the antlers. You know, I might want to do some really dark markings on the wings when I put them on, right? So because of that, I will also keep black in the mix. And what I will do if I need a dark is to mix black with one of these two really bright saturated colors to create a shadow color. And the reason I would do that, so when you're dealing with saturated and muted colors, I mentioned yesterday that one way to mute a color is to mix gray with it. And you can also mute a color by mixing black or white with it. And by mute, I mean make it less bright. So when you mix white with your Jade, you get this, which is not nearly as bright and vibrant, right? It's washed out because it has white in it. So if you do black, you get the opposite. You know, it takes it darker. It might be still pretty vibrant, but it's much darker, so it's not as bright to your eyes. But when you add gray is when you truly start losing brightness. So what I would do, because I have a very saturated color scheme on this, I'm using all pretty bright colors, because even though we added white to this, it's still pretty, you know, this is still pretty bright. So I don't want to go too muted with it. It won't look right, because I've got a lot of bright colors on this model. So I can't go too muted, so I don't want to use any color that's grayed out. But I can use black and use the drama that I get to make these colors work together, even though it mutes it. So no gray, but black, yes. And you don't want any white mixed in when you mix your darks. You want them to stay pretty vibrant. So little did you know, this was also going to be a class in color mixing, but this is kind of the dealio. So the reason that we would keep this... Oh, hey, Nomad Zeke. Sorry, I missed you. I was extemporizing.
Jacob also subscribed. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, Astley. The bold colors are more useful. You can always mute them, but you can't make a muted color more bright without adding a bold color. So that's why I tend to say that the saturated colors, the more pure colors, are more useful once you are getting accustomed to color mixing. You can do a lot more with them. So I still do keep the glow colors in my box because there are times when I want to use this, especially for highlighting purples. It's an easy step, right? But if I'm working with pure colors and keeping things very bright, then, it varies. I still use Runic Glow a lot. I'm not going to use it in this particular incidents. Hi, Zewo. Hey, Jacob, thank you for the resub. Yeah, I'm sorry, Justin probably just said that. A tier 3 even, wow. Inara, yeah, it does matter because all of our blacks are different. Something that may not be in general knowledge. But when I was designing the paint lines, the one thing I really didn't want to do to you guys was I didn't want to make you pay twice for the same product. And so all the blacks are in fact different. Basmara is a little bit not quite as heavy of a black. And compared to pure black, which has just a metric crap ton of black pigment put into it. So Basmara is a little milder, and that's why I decided I wanted it, because I don't want to totally suffocate these intense colors. I just want to add a little touch of dark, and I thought this might... I haven't actually messed with this before, but given that it's formulation, I thought it might actually give me not quite... It wouldn't take it as dark as fast. Although it is still a pure black pigment, still a lamp black. Now, when you get into solid black, that's a very different black. That's painter's black, which means it actually has blue and brown mixed together to make a complex black. So it is not just pure black pigment. And then when you get to dragon black, that's a very cold black. So that has blue and violet in it to make it a very cold black. And if you take dragon and you take solid and you mix just a touch of white with them, and then you take pure black and mix a touch of white with that, you'll be able to see that. And that's the great thing about mixing pure white into a paint, is that you can use pure white adding to kind of figure out the pigments that may be in a dark paint when you can't really see. Like Nightshade Purple looks black, and so you add white to it, and then you can really see that it's shifting toward more of a blue purple. So use that tool when you wonder about pigments that may be in a very dark paint. Sometimes it will help you to just add white. Wigface, we try, if you need to do an appropriate link, we try to avoid them unless Justin is putting them up. So you have to ask Justin, who is our videographer, who is the disembodied voice in my background, who doesn't talk very much. And it really depends on the link. Usually we don't link unless it's a product that I'm talking about. We don't, if you want to put a picture of one of your things up or one of your projects up, then you should put it in our Discord. Let's see. So yeah, Zero, I think I answered that then. I think it's a little less loaded of a black. It's got a little less black pigment, so that means it's a little bit of a milder black. And so I want to use it here because I don't want to completely bury these colors, because neither of these colors is really strong. Phthalo green and magenta are pretty fugitive. So I want a milder black so that I can darken them and get those dark rich tones and not completely black them out. Let's see here. Thanks, Nomedzik. I didn't know that links are auto deleted, but it makes sense because, yeah, Justin is the one who can post them. Yeah, Astley, I just answered that for Nora as well. Good morning, Francis. Morning, Gilbert Dog. Yeah, well, that's because Dragon Black is cooler, Crispies, and when you're going for a shadow color, going cooler is actually mimics the way our eye normally sees colors in the environment. Darker is usually cooler, and shadows are usually cooler, and especially on a sunny day, you'll see shadows are very blue. And since there is blue in Dragon Black, then it makes sense that if you're mixing it into your shadows, it would mimic, a natural shadow. Just slightly. Very subtle. Actually, red, you do sometimes want to add black, but it depends, right? It depends on the red pigment. Hey, Paul John's Life. Morning. Morning, Jetta Rose. Getting some latecomers. That's okay. You guys miss so much value already. I feel so bad when I front load the content of like color theory discussion in the video. I always feel so bad because I'm going to be like, go back and watch the beginning. But yeah. Good. All right, cool. So that's why I'm using these. That's why I'm going to try to use Besmara. I could use Pure Black as well. I would just need to be very gentle with it. So we'll see if Besmara is a little bit more forgiving. However, first of all, we're just going to get a base coat on the rest of our Spirit Beast. At least his body. And I did clean some of the mold lines off him. I found his tail yesterday. We did not have his tail. For those who have not seen Spirit Beast's tail, it is glorious. Oh, here, let's get Spirit Beast's name up. So if you are not familiar with this model, it is beautiful. It is beautiful, pretty. He has little folded wings, which are adorable. And he has a big rack of antlers that go on his head. He's very majestic, actually. The composition of this model, once it goes together, is just beautiful. Especially because you can't see his pose so much now, but he's kind of perched with his paws together up on this rock. And it makes for a very nice piece, essentially. Yeah, so he's very majestic. It'd be a good alternative unicorn for some fantasy world where you didn't want unicorns, but you wanted something similar. In my opinion. All right, so let's get the little tail off there. And this model also, as you can see, fits together pretty well. Actually, David actually put his wings on yesterday, and they actually stuck. They're still a little bit gappy, but they set in, and he stood put together. So, yeah, shouldn't intimidate you. I mean, pretty much paint the body the same color as, if you're me. What I'm going to do with him, and I could paint the fur entirely a different color, but what I decided is I wanted the horse parts here to be lighter, or the deer parts, or whatever they are. So I'm just going to base coat with my mint green, and I'm going to just highlight with white and make them look white. I'm going to use mint green as my shadow. And the reason that I wouldn't use another color for a shadow is that I want this still to look like the Spirit Beast is kind of spectral all over, so I want to keep to my spectral colors. And I also want him to look like he goes together. I think that monsters that are part one thing and part another can look good if you paint their parts completely differently. Like I could have painted him as a fox up here, and then as a cat here and a horse here, and I could have used completely natural colors for each of those animals, and he would have really looked slapped together at the end. He might have looked okay. There are things I could have done to make him look good. But if I stick to kind of a base color for everything, and I just alternate how light or dark are the color of the shadows, it's going to look a lot better like he more belongs together, like he is one beast. And I like that, so. Yeah, for sure, Aetherworks. So, Colonel Kane, do watch the earlier part of this, Colonel Kane, because I talk about why I pared down my paint selection. Because yesterday, I was also using Phantom Glow and Runic Glow, but I decided I didn't need those because I realized I wasn't reaching for them. I was only reaching for these three things because I was using this to shade and I was skipping this entirely. So normally this works together as a good triad. And that is Mint Green 9263, Phantom Glow 9319, and Tianxia Jade, which is one of the more beautiful new Pathfinder colors, at 89518. But don't really need that if I can mix these two together. And because there's no black in them or any other weird colors, they work that way. I'll get a slightly different color because this is a little warmer. It has a little more yellow in it than a pure phthalo green. But you could instead, if you wanted a very cold spirit beast, you could in fact use clear phthalo green if you have it from ReaperCon. Then I use Clear Magenta 9098 because somebody wanted me to use Runic Glow 9320, which is a lot like Clear Magenta and white. It just has a little bit more blue in it. And I was using Pure White 9039. And the reason I would use Pure White here instead of an off-white is that I want these colors to stay really vibrant and bright. If I used an off-white with yellow or gray or something in it, it would mute down these colors and they wouldn't be as vibrant. And I don't want that on this miniature. I want them to be very glowy. And glowy usually means avoiding grayed out colors. You want a more pure color, more bright, more eye-popping. So I decided to toss out Phantom Glow, and I'm going to toss out Runic Glow, which is still a lovely color for highlighting purples, but we don't have purples here. Or if we do, it'll be later. So I pared down my color selection to something very, very pared down, and then I decided to use Bismara Black to maybe create some darker colors for things specifically for like hooves and antlers and the lower part of his legs that I want to do like a bay horse, like black socks, and then maybe some white socks. We'll see. I think it would be cute to give him socks, like give him black legs, but then give him little socks on a couple of feet. That would be cute. All right, and it's all about cute. Yeah, Runic Glow is like tops for just a quick highlighter for any purple you could name. And it's also a great blush color for skin tones, for if you're looking for a more delicate color. You can mix it in a little bit to lighter skin tones, like fair skin. Makes a good blush color for that. Or for earlobes and noses and things like that. Other things like that go pink. But yeah. Yeah. I actually pared down my miniatures collection so much. If anything, I have too few models these days. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell Reaper. But I actually do need to put in an order and just order more models to play with. But I have wanted to paint Spirit Beast for a long time, so Spirit Beast is our friend for the next several episodes. All right, well, let's get to painting Spirit Beast now that I've re-answered a couple of questions for the latecomers. And now that I've been painting him for a day, I have a much clearer idea of where I'm going, because yesterday I was just like, let's try this. So instead, I know that mint green is going to be my base for everything, so I'm just going to base coat the rest of the body in mint green. That was about 5 or 6 drops of mint green, 1 drop of water. I keep it in a handy dropper bottle so that I don't have to measure. Sometimes I just use a brush full, and that's about the same, but inaccurate, so it depends on how much of a stickler you are. All right, Spirit Beast. So I'm going to make his body here white. But I want a shadow color. When I paint white, I always lay down my shadow color and I work up to white rather than starting with white and shading it. I just find I get better results that way. And it's a less tasking. I don't know. Painting white can be a pain in the butt, and I find that it's more enjoyable if I start with the shadow and work up. Here we go. Let's get our, and I'm using my big flat brush for this because with base coating, it just use as big a brush as you can. And since these are big flat areas, flat brush makes sense. It goes fast. It gives good coverage. This is actually a sable, an old sable, which normally I've been using for my mixing brush lately, but for base coating works just as well, especially when you don't have to like hit any tiny details on this model really at this point. You just have to kind of keep from painting over what you've already done, but I haven't painted right here. I haven't shaded or done anything right here anyway, so it's easy. Easy peasy. Always use a bigger brush, as big a brush as you can get away with for base coating, because it's the boring part. You want to get past it and get to the fun stuff. Let's see here. Oh yeah, well, Pathfinder is formulated a lot like the Bones line, Motor City Ray. So, although core is a little bit higher acrylic in general in its base, they work just fine together. Oh, I'm hearing blurbs. I thought I muted that. Hold on. My Discord is definitely not being a happy friend. Discord, what are you doing? I muted you ages ago. It apparently did not listen. Mute server. There we go. I did not tell it to unmute, so I do not know why it unmuted. Unless when Discord updates, it pretty much, you know, kills all of your preferences, which would be very annoying. There, that should have done it. Let's hope. There we go. Adjusting. Sorry for the adjustment.
Conversely, what you could do, Miss Ann, is in the settings, there's a thing called a mode called streamer mode.
Yeah.
You can just flip it on, and it mutes all of that stuff for you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Basically, could be done in one button. So.
That's nice. All right. I'll try to remember that for next time, since I just went through and muted all of them individually.
No problem.
Yeah, Motor City Ray. They're a lot of our contract lines are formulated when we do a contract line. I usually try, or they will specify using the most up-to-date technology we have. So since Bones introduced some new tools into my toolbox, they are formulated a lot like the Bones line. Especially because some of the colors are very vibrant, and so to give them as much coverage as I could give them, because like bright colors usually have the least coverage, I formulated them like I formulated Bones. So they will mix with everything else we've got. No problem. Anything Reaper does. I mean, don't quote me on this, obviously, now, since I'm not actively the one designing the new lines, but previously, all Reaper paint works with all Reaper paint, and that's it. You never have to worry about it. So essentially, any new line that comes out may incorporate new technology or may not, but it will generally work with everything that came before. All right. Hello, 1DLS. No problem, no bet. It's okay. I should have had it all muted. I thought I did, but apparently things got reset. Oh, Image of Betrayal. Yes, you are. You're going to have to totally go back and watch this on the VOD or the YouTube. All right, so now he looks a lot more cohesive. He is all painted out. Let's get some stuff mixed up for our leopard spots. So one of the things we need for our leopard spots is a near black color. Yeah, just what we grabbed that Besmara black for. So we have to decide if we're going to do with leopard spots. Let me see if I can get my photo reference again. Here I am. All right. So if you look at a leopard from, you know, anything, you'll see that the black actually doesn't look like necessarily really strong black unless it's big splotches. Like it's a little bit faded. And the reason is that usually there are light colored hairs kind of impinging on it, especially when you're dealing with the rosettes. So let me get the rosette picture up. So it's close, but I find that if I go too strong with my black, it doesn't look right. It's a little bit too bold. So I tend to mix a little bit of color into my black when I'm doing animal patterns like this. So I don't want to use the pure Besmara. I would either want to thin it so that it wasn't quite so stark, or I would want to mix a color into it. And I think I kind of want to make them maybe purpley, bluish, maybe a magenta and black. Let's try it. Hey, Crispies, have fun. I'm full of something, Motor for City Ray. We'll call it knowledge because this is a family stream. I'm just going to start with 2 drops of black. I'm going to mix in a bunch of magenta because I know magenta is weak compared to the black. Don't be fooled. This bottle is full of magenta pigment, but the pigment itself is not as strong as the black. It will be heavily influenced by black. In the same way that when you try to mix in orange, the yellow is easily overwhelmed by red. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just start with a 2-to-1 ratio. And let's mix that up. Yeah, see, the black totally overwhelmed that. So I'm going to have to go even higher. Although, remember, if I mixed white with this, I'd actually be able to see that it's a dark purple. Here, I'll show you. Let's get our white open. We'll need that anyway. Pure White 9039, always my go-to white. It is our highest pigmented white. I'm going to thin it about 2 to 1. Hey, Jeffrey. Alrighty. Boop, boop. So if we mix a little bit of white into this, we can see the purple. See? So yeah, so if you ever have a really dark color, if you're trying to mix a real dark color and you really are not sure how much the color is coming through because it's just so dark because you added black like I just did, you can toss a tiny bit of white into a little part of it over here. Take it separate. Don't mix it in that. And it'll tell you how purple you actually are. And yeah, this guy's actually got a lot of purple in it. So the only question is, do I want that to show when I put these spots on? And do I want to add just a tiny touch of white? If I add a tiny touch of white, it is going to mute it. So I'm not certain I want to. But at the same time, if I add that tiny touch of white, I'm going to be able to see the purple a lot better. So that's a hard call for me. One thing I can do if I feel that I do add a tiny touch of white and it gets a little grayed out is I can add more of my bright color to take that down. I think I'm going to add a tiny touch. Just a tiny touch and see if I can get it to mute a little bit. Just a little bit. All right. And then I'm going to thin it. Because that's the other way that I can make it less harsh is to throw some water into it. Just a couple brushfuls at this point. And now I'm starting to see the purple quite a bit. See, so now we can see that it is a dark purple. So that's good. That gives me exactly what I was aiming for, and I didn't lose much of my saturation. Excellent, excellent. All right, let me switch my seating here. There we go. I have a new chair today, so we're trying it out to see how it feels on my back and to see if I'm at a good level as compared to my desk. I don't want to be too high or my shoulders will just not like it. So we shall see how this goes and how good it keeps me in posture. All right, excellent. So let's mix up our white really quick. I actually added an extra drop of white there, so it's a little bit more than a 2 to 1 paint to water. Since we are also doing an animal, I must talk about fur texture. Actually, I missed a little spot here. Boop, boop, there. So when you are painting a furry animal, you should use brush strokes that go in the same direction as the fur. And this applies whether you are trying to highlight all these little areas or whether you are putting on markings like the fox, where I used a brush stroke that went in the same direction and as his fur grows, or if you're trying to do, especially if you're trying to do a smooth area where you're trying to like suggest fur texture. At that point, you're thinning your paint down if you're doing it my way, and you're loading about half your brush, and you kind of see that here the fur grows out at kind of a slant, and then here it grows down. So the fur is essentially radiating out from the head. It goes in a star or sunbeam shape out from the head. So we're going to continue to mimic that as we come here, and we can use this kind of as a guidance because you can see the fur is growing down here. So that's the stroke we want to use here. You can see here it's growing a little bit further out. So that's the stroke we want to use here, is going in that same direction. As it gets back here toward the rear end, it's going to go more parallel to the ground. It's hard to see, I know. There you go. And so you use that stroke, and the length of your stroke is how long your fur wants to be. So in general, if you want shorter fur, use a shorter stroke. You can even just block in this whole muscle area with longer strokes, and then use short strokes at the edges to suggest the short fur. But if you are trying to paint fur on a smooth surface like this, this is the way you do it. Just use tiny little white strokes at the edge. And then this muscle is really thin, so it just gets tiny little white strokes all the way up it. And, you know, if you lose some of your texture, you lose some of your texture. Let's see if I can get this close because it's hard to see. Let's see here. Come on, little spirit beast, get in focus. All right. It's still very hard to see because I'm using light over light. I wonder if I went with a lighter backdrop, if you could see it. 1 second. I'm going to adjust I'll put the palette behind Spirit Beast and see if that makes a difference. Yeah, that does. So there, now you can see this kind of fuzzy texture that I've gotten. I'm sure I missed a spot, but at this point I'm not working with it, so I don't care. I'm just like, you know, whatever. I'll get up there. Here, if it really bothers you, Deftware, I will get it. I don't so much mind because I'm not mixing colors up here, so it's just grabbing mint green and applying it. There we go. All right. Now, so let us resume fur. And then once we have our fur down, we can do our spots. But we at least want to lay down some of our fur texture before we get to the spots, because obviously doing fur texture underneath the spots would be a bad idea. Because you really want your fur texture in place and your undercolor highlighted before you do spots. So do the yellow on the leopard before you put the spots on the leopard. It will make your leopard look like a lion for a little while, but it's okay. He'll get better. So little strokes to do fur texture. And now we gotta talk about surface control, which is the amount of paint of a particular color that covers a particular percentage of the surface. Right now, if I just do this, he's just going to look like a light mint green animal back here. In order for this to look white, I have to cover almost all of this surface with the white. And the reason for that is usually your eye will see a color as whatever it looks, whatever 50% or more of the surface appears to be. So if 50% of this surface is mint green, it's going to see it as mint green. If 50% of this surface is kind of a blend between mint green and white, it's going to see it as a light mint green. And if 50% of this surface is white, it's going to start to see it more as white. Except there's a problem with that. Usually what I advise is like 50% of the surface, your base color, whatever you want it to look, then 25% highlights and 25% shadows. And that generally gives you the right appearance that you're shooting for, that percentage. But you can't highlight white except with more white. And so in the case of white, you actually want 75% of the surface to be white or very close to it in order for an object to look white. Or miniature, I should say. If you're doing dramatic lighting, you can get away with making it look white in other ways. Or if you have a lot of very dark colors on your miniature, then you can really make something look pure white a lot easier because the contrast between the colors will enable you to do that. Good, Cornico. Excellent. I really try to break it down. And I've spent a lot of time trying to teach people what I know. So I always kind of ask myself, you know, am I teaching effectively? Now down here, the fur tends to go kind of from front to back. Like on the front of an animal's leg, you'll kind of see like kind of a vertical stroke. Like it goes down and there's a part down the front of the leg and the fur goes that way and the fur goes that way. And so here we want to kind of mimic that and make sure we're keeping on with our brush stroke. Also, something to ask yourself at this point is, am I trying to highlight this animal like he's glowing, or am I trying to highlight this animal like naturalistically? Because it'll change. You know, if he's natural, then I want to definitely emphasize highlights on the upper surfaces where light would fall. If he's kind of glowy all over, then I can kind of ignore that. I'm going to do socks down there, so I don't really need to paint this white down there anyway. All right, so that's coming along. And you see how now he's starting to look more white back here. He still looks kind of pale green though, you notice. Like a lot of the surface here is still green. And so he's still, though he looks pale up here, he doesn't quite look white. So that's the key there, is we need to go more white on him. And of course the problem is, this is where I was thinking about the natural versus unnatural, is when you add the wing in there, you've got a shadow under it, right? But I think I want to paint it all white anyway, and then just add a darker shadow to show that there's a shadow from the wing, and probably add it in blue or a different color so that I can still make my beast look white. Just going to kind of highlight a little bit underneath him at this point, the fur down here. Remember that snow leopards go white further down in their bodies. Although if you're painting a very naturalistic color scheme, you're going to want to go with like a gray down here because that would be the natural shadow. Or have a bit of blue-gray. All right, get this connected up because there's usually a bit of a tendon that goes there. If you study animal anatomy, you will be better able to paint animal anatomy. Being a one-time dog breeder and dog shower, I have studied animal anatomy quite a bit. I'm much better at drawing animals than I am drawing people. People anatomy still throws me for a loop. All right. Now we're covering up more of that mint. We're getting more of that white appearance that we want. Just checking to make sure that I'm not missing any chat questions. And of course, up here we want to go white. Now, up here on his mane, I probably will not go up to white. I'll probably keep this color more of the mint green. So although I've shaded it very strongly here, I'll go back up and highlight a lot of this with mint green. And I may go up slightly, like I may put little details in with white, but in general, I'm going to keep his rear end a little lighter. Although he does have white on his face, as you can see from the fox markings. So, which actually I could block in on this side right now. Remember, we want that little circle where the whiskers come out to be white. The front part of the muzzle, front lower part. And we want a dark band, and then we want another band of white coming out around his mouth here. And it's unfortunately his lower jaw isn't like real apparent, so we can't quite do the entire fox highlighting, but we can get the mane a little bit here. Just a little bit, and then I actually gave him eyebrows too. And a little bit of a lower lid. Doing this helps the eyes stand out more. Putting light colors around. Not only do most animals have light colors around their eyes, or many animals, especially canids, and I guess foxes or vulpines, but it makes it easy to bring out that expression when you've got that there. So yeah, there we go. A little bit of a digression, but I wanted to get those colors kind of blocked in there. And again, I'll use a brush stroke that's more like the fur is growing as I get toward the top of the head. Even though I don't have much room there. So that at least gets him starting to look like the other side. I haven't added his darkness, but... Alright, a little bit more white and then we'll do our spots. You guys are all really quiet today. So what you'll notice is that this white is pretty transparent, right? So where I first put one layer of white on, it doesn't look like white. It just looks like a lighter green. And then as I build it up, it goes up to white as I put another layer of white on top of it and maybe a third layer of white. This is intentional. This allows you to highlight white up using only white and not mixing a bunch of intermediate shades of paint or reaching for numerous colors to do this. It's a very natural way to highlight up to white. And it enables you to keep this texture. If you're trying to do a fur texture, then you don't have to worry. You know, you're just layering over it again and again with white. And it gives you a real nice built-up, soft texture by the time you're done. And I do want to hide some of this mint green. I may well decide that my mint green shadows are a little too dark at this point, because that's a very dark shadow. And I may glaze white over them or put one layer of white over the top of them to make my shadows less defined. But we'll see. So now he's really, see that haunch is really starting to look white now, because I've covered up most of it, of the upper part of it, and I've done like 3 layers of highlighting, and I still have a furry texture. There. So that looks very, very white now. And the belly, on the other hand, looks like a pale green, even though it's got 2 layers of white highlighting on it. So you can see how building up the white, it's a gradual process, but I find it a lot more enjoyable than trying to shade pure white. Enraptured. Well, good, good. Because shading white can just be a pain in the butt, and then usually you end up having to layer white over it, over your shading, to blend it in anyway. So I like the more organic highlighting method that I'm using here, where I'm just painting layers of fur and then building up my texture. And then it gets a soft look, which I really enjoy. Soft animals should be soft. So that's what we're doing. And then remember also that your final highlight, I'm kind of blobbing a little bit of white on here. This is a rounded surface, so your highlight shape should also be rounded. So it should be a round highlight for your final pure white. And then what that does is emphasizes the shape of the object. And this is also true whenever you are highlighting things like muscles, like biceps, pectorals, anything like that. I see a lot of line highlights that are very flat when I look at beginning painters' work, and just make your highlight round and it will look a lot better. There we go. I just did a layer of fur over the top of that shadow because it was, this is pointing up, so I thought it was too deep. I'm going to do another one here. And the great thing about this is you want your brush strokes to show, so it doesn't matter if you can see them. All right, so that is a pretty white haunch, pretty white horse bit there at that point. And it looks soft and furry, and I like it. So we'll do it. Let's see it. Let's mess it up now. This is the problem, right? You spend all this time doing beautiful soft fur, and then you mess it up. So one thing I do want to do, though, is I want to see what color my purple makes with ground color, because I am going to have to... When you've got rosettes, which are, if you remember, the inside of them is slightly darker than the outside. We're going to have to choose whether we want a purple on the inside of those rosettes or if we want a green on the inside of those rosettes. Since his ground color is green, but he isn't really reading that way. The other interesting thing we could do is use a blue, like I mentioned before, because we can mix a blue. Maybe the blue will work. Let's look at that. 2 drops of Jade. 4 drops of magenta. Let's see what that does. Since we are putting a purple color, a Magenta E Color over the top of... Oh, that just made it dark purple. All right, so that's actually what that color makes. That's not a bad color. If we want it to go truly blue, we need more green. I showed this yesterday to people because it's my favorite magic trick with pigment, is that pink and green make blue. There we go. There's our blue. Sweet. If we have a little white to it, you can see that it's blue. I need to figure out what my spots are going to be. So usually when I do rosettes, because if you remember, that's what rosettes look like. I do not try to put a black spot down and then put a lighter spot inside of it and do all that. I usually will instead do the lighter color and just paint the spots as if they're just going to be that lighter color. I use that to space out my spots on the animal. As you can see, they're different. Like some of them are more round, some of them are more square almost, some are more oval, some are really irregular, almost diamond shaped. And so you want to vary up your shapes a bit. You can put down your black first and then put your other spot inside of it. It does work. I guess we could show both methods. I just like to map out my spots before I start whipping out that really dark color and throwing splotches all over my beast. So if I was going to use my lighter one, let's see here. My worry is that we really need to use a color that is more like the green, because that's the ground color of the beast. So we'll see here. I'm still messing about. I don't know if purple spots are going to look right. I want to have a backup just in case. Could do a blue. There we go. And you don't want them too dark either, or if you're going to use a darker color, you want to thin it. Because these are pretty light on the interior, you know. They're not super dark. Alrighty. Doing 3 things at once. Well, that's cool. That's like I do all day too, Inara. So all the feels. Okay, well, let's see. Let's look at blue. This blue is mixed from clear magenta and our jade color, Janzia. And I'm gonna, it's thinned because I want it to be thinner. If you start with a thinner color, it's easy to paint over if you blurf up. So let's just start, let's pick a spot. Haha, pick a spot. See what I did there. And then we also have to decide like how big are our spots going to be? Probably a bit bigger. And remember how I showed you that they kind of go in lines, right? So we're going to do that. And we're going to not worry about making them too round, and we're not going to worry about making them too regular. We're just going to start blocking them in with this kind of pale bluey gray or muted blue. And sometimes if I see them going too predictable, I can make a spot that's obviously smaller or larger or a different shape. And this, using this kind of softer, this means that if I really screw up at this point, it's easy to paint over because these aren't too dark and I used thinned paint. So if I need to touch up, I can touch up without having to worry about making these light colors cover over like a pure black or almost pure black rosette. So let's put a little dot there. The other thing that happens is that the animal only really goes in rows one way, and then you'll notice it kind of alternates. So it's kind of going zigzaggy from one row to the next. This is not like a, hugely regular pattern, but more or less you'll notice this on animals. So there I blurfed and I got a little too close to those other rosettes on that one. So I blurfed right here. So it's easy at this point, because I'm using such thin paint and such a light color, for me to grab my pure white and kind of wipe that out. And again, I'm going to use a brush stroke that is in the same direction as the fur, so that my correction fits in with everything I'm doing. And I definitely need neaten up my mistakes before I start painting in the rosette. And down here, maybe I'll do a couple of darker spots there. We're going to continue to do our spot pattern. And they tend to get bigger as they get higher on the beast. So enlarge your spots. Make them big spots now as we get up high. And then sometimes, often wild animals will have what they call a dorsal stripe, where the ridge of the back is much darker. We won't quite get there here because we've got a tail that isn't even on and different fur texture up here. But if it was a real leopard, often they'll have a black stripe going down their back that you should also take into effect. Yeah. All right. So let's do that. Let's make a couple of darker spots that are probably going to be filled in down here. Even though these little spots going down the leg, as you might remember, are going to be pure black if we're doing a leopard pattern, I'm still going to block them in my lighter gray so that I can fix any mistakes. Boop. And then I'm just like pretty much using these little guys as a guide. All right, so we've got some spots set up. Blurf needs to be an emote. Yeah, I think actually David suggested, I think it needs to be a big paint splash or a little paint splash. That needs to be an emote. That totally needs to be. All right, pardon me while I adjust my seat. Although actually I haven't had to adjust my seat on this new chair nearly as much as I did on the old one, so that makes me happy. All right, and a little bit, I'm gonna make a couple more spots out here to blend this in. And maybe just a little bit of smaller spots here to fade these spots down. Like I'm concentrating on the rump, because I kind of like this nice light highlight here. I want to keep it. You don't have to, obviously, an unnatural animal, you do not have to stick to the plan. When you don't have to stick to a natural pattern, you can break it up. Want to keep some of my spots, this will be more like a cat pattern in a moment. But right now, actually, if you notice, because I'm doing a little bit squarer spots, what this actually looks like is a giraffe pattern. So it's, animal patterns have a lot of similarities from species to species, often. So it's just interesting to note. There we are. I'm pretty much putting an extra layer of this blue on just to make the spots a little more solid. And then we're going to put our dark color. We're going to use the dark purple around the edges. It's already being made. Awesome, Reaper John. Thank you. Alrighty, so we've got our spots mapped out. So now remember that our rosettes are not just drawing a circle around each of these spots. Instead, these are broken up. And you can see the fur, because a snow leopard has longer fur, right? You can see the direction of the fur very clearly in these. So when you do your little dots or your stripes around your spots, use the same brush stroke, the same sort of brush stroke that you used to set up your white fur. And since you have the fur right there as a reference, you know, it can be easy. And remember, when we go for these very small dots, even those have a shape that's based on fur. So here we go. See it? So spots are actually more like little dashes. So when you do those tiny little spots, you want to keep that in mind. And this all is dependent on your brush control. I mean, you know, as your brush control gets better and better as you paint, and it gets better by attempting to paint small, fine things. And you can you can improve your brush control faster by using some simple tips. If you are on my Patreon, in fact, to go and look up building brush control faster. I have a PDF on it, I think, early last year. It gives you some tips for building your brush control so you can do the fine stuff. So I can pretty much do little dashes. It also helps if you have a brush, obviously, that has a very fine tip. I'll get it closer. So if you can suggest those little dashes in the same direction as the fur. If you screw up and you get an irregular pattern like that, or too regular of a pattern. Hey, Samurai Jack. Wow, nice for the subs. Oh, Spatula Dog. Yes, this is iPivo document camera. I got it after Justin here at Reaper tried a document camera. Sorry, my sticky tack is not as sticky enough. Tried an older version of a document camera for kind of as a test, and I really liked how high resolution it was. So I looked around in the interwebs and I settled on iPivo because there are a lot of teachers that use them in classrooms and pretty much use them all day, and the camera holds up well. So for long streams or for a lot of video work, I figured that was a glowing endorsement. Mine is the VZ-X. They have different ones depending on what sort of connectivity you want, of whether you want HDMI, whether you want wireless connectivity or not. It really depends on what you're doing with the camera. But these are really the highest res cameras. Otherwise, the quality of my video is entirely due to my lighting setup and my backdrop, so it varies greatly by what you do. Like, your mileage may vary. You can get a good resolution camera, but you also need to get really even lighting for your setup to get good pictures, I find. And that's true for taking photographs of your miniatures as well. I guess since I mentioned my Patreon, I should plug it. I have a Patreon, everybody. It is, in fact, the thing keeping me financially afloat right now. Yay! Because I moved to California to be with my awesome guy. And so, yeah, so thank you for everybody who is my patron. It is patreon.com/paintingbig. The nice thing about it is that I can do a bunch of PDFs, which are nice references, like, alongside video, right? So, okay, this is a bigger spot. So let's try to make our strokes very small and dashy around the edges. Remember, we still want rosettes. We want the interior to be lighter. And if we have to, if we kind of think we screwed it up, hold on. Let me see if I screw this one up. If we feel we screwed it up, we can come back with a lighter spot of color on the interior. Let's see. Let's get some white and put it in our blue. And bring it back in. Make a lighter spot. And that makes it more like a rosette. See? Ta-da! Yeah, Spatula Dog. I was using a Logitech, and what always frustrated me is it just could not get this high resolution. It could never get this crisp. Even when I had Focus fixed and was working with its software, and I just could never get it to this. I love the level of detail I can get from this. I love that I can get close enough that you guys can see my freaking brush strokes with this. Like, if I want to, I can get up way close, and it's got an autofocus button. And I can show you all of my bad Bad brush strokes. Let's see. They're perfect. But I can actually do like tiny eyes with this, and you guys can actually see the details, which is really what you need for miniature painting if you're going to stream mini painting. Obviously, you don't need this sort of thing. So you can use a combination of little fur strokes and splotches. Also, to get that leopard look, right? See, there's your leopard spot. This guy, I connected the dots a little bit too much, and if you do that, and you decide you want to be more spotted. Now, the closer you do get with your focus, the less depth of field you've got. So that's why it's going out of focus much easier than when I had it down further. But this guy is like kind of surrounded with almost a box of lines, and this guy has more spots, and the spots look more natural. So if you do that, pick up a little bit of your white and interrupt your silhouette a little bit. So like pick a spot and interrupt. And that will give you the more rosette look. Oh, it's construction paper or scrapbooking paper, depending on what color, Zuo. Yeah, and well, this is different setups too, Spatula Dog. Like, I'm here in California because I moved in the middle of April. And so my setup here is my home setup also, and also the setup I use for my Patreon videos. Justin, like when he does videos at Reaper, has a completely different room that he does stuff in. So, and nowadays a lot of people are also painting from home. So like when you look at Michael Proctor's stream on Tuesday, or sometimes, does Josh do it from home, Justin, or does he do it from Reaper?
He does it, well, he does it from Reaper normally, but
Okay.
as of the lockdown back in March, we started doing it at home, and he's been doing it there since.
Okay. So yeah, I use construction paper, guys. I like to get a paper that is a medium gray. I find that it is the best possible backdrop for miniatures of any color. If you are working on a very dark miniature, you will want to use a darker gray. If you are working on a very pale miniature, you will want to use a lighter gray. Or like a white. Remember how I moved my palette down? I don't normally do this, right? But camera's color correction tends to adjust for the model and the backdrop. So that's why it's important what color and what shade of backdrop you're using. This is such a light colored model that for you guys to see my brush strokes on the white, I had to put a white backdrop in, and the easiest way to do that was just to drag my porcelain palette down. And if I move back, if I move it out, look how much lighter the model looks now, right? You can't see the white as easily. You can't see the brush strokes as easily. You can see the spots actually. So now I might go with that and work with my palette out of frame. But be conscious of this because cameras are not as good as our eyes. And so they will be affected by your backdrop. To get great miniatures photography, you've got to know that and adjust your backdrop next to the model. Now, you may be able to put a white balance strip in with black, white, and various colors on it, just a little strip of tones, and have your camera adjust to that. And that is something that Justin can do with his professional grade cameras. But I'm not so convinced that it will work with your phone camera, or anything other than a DSLR at this point. I don't know. What do you think, Justin?
I think that your phone has a really small sensor in it, and it does not have the same sort of resolution capability. But I think at the end of the day, you can still do a whole lot mobily more now so than you could 5 years ago. I think that phone camera technology is moving at a absolute light speed.
Yeah,
But
me
that's
too.
not to say that I would say it's comparable to what handheld digital cameras were, or like mirrorless digital cameras were like 5 years ago.
Point and
Today,
clicks. Ye old
yeah,
point and
point and
click.
clicks.
Yeah, like my
Correct.
phone definitely takes as good pictures as my old point and click, so that's why I just got rid of my point and click. You just don't need it anymore. It's not even useful. It's more trouble than it's worth when you can just whip out your phone.
Right. Important things to notate are like it are obviously megapixels, but megapixels aren't everything. So,
No.
for instance, size of the sensor is really important, and basically, I know that the size of sensors that go into basically your phone cameras, they're even smaller than like micro two thirds. I think that's what they're called. So
I'm gonna move this back.
they're really small sensors. They can be high megapixel, but like 50 megapixel on a micro two thirds is still less than 30 megapixels on a full frame.
Right,
Does that
right.
make sense?
It's
Because
all
it's just
relative.
capturing more data. Yeah, it's
Right.
relative.
Yep. I think the sensor on this IPVO is probably kind of middle of the range. Do you think, or is it more like it seems to give a nice high resolution easier than other cameras I've used?
Yeah, I would say that they probably put a standard digital camera sensor in there. They probably didn't use a gosh, I can't remember. It's been a hot minute since I did any photography stuff. Um, they probably used a micro two thirds sensor in the IPUVO,
Yeah.
since it's meant to do documents and not like hardcore detailed work.
Right.
But it's probably advanced. So isn't it like, what is it, like 8 or 12 megapixels?
It's yeah, it can go up really high. Like that was part of
Okay.
why I wanted to get it is because I'm like, oh, awesome, because then I knew I could get high resolution, and of course, taking video at that resolution, fills up all of your hard drive very quickly. But I could at least get crisp enough. I knew they had capability to do it, so that
Right.
I could get close. As far as
Just
that
like
real chibi, Justin has taught me that it's less the software. The software for the camera will definitely like factor in, but the hardware, the core hardware, gives you a certain like a threshold. Would you say, Justin, what you can't go beyond?
actually, yeah. No, so to piggyback on what Chibi just said, is that so the best way that you can produce a quality picture or a video is to is to circumnavigate the baked in, I guess, color codecs that those different companies use. So like
Mm-hmm.
he's talking about Canon and Nikon,
Right.
and basically their color science is, I mean, then you start talking about what they bake in, and their picture profiles. A lot of people who just do photos, they want to cut Canon out of it entirely or Nikon out of it entirely. They just shoot raw, and they do all of their stuff in the software side of things. But if you want less work, then you have to rely on the color codecs, and then you have to really rely on the color bit depth of the I guess the codecs of the camera you're using. So like, for instance, the C200 we use upstairs, natively we don't record raw with that. We should, but raw external recorders tend to be really pricey. Um, but basically, what happens is it takes a picture. I've set its profile to like as neutral as I can get it, so I can do as much laterally with it once I get it out of the camera. But like, it'll tell you when you look at the specs for your camera, okay, I'm recording in 1920 by 1080, and it's got 10-bit color depth at XXX, right? That is the natural codec that it builds into it, because it bakes that into it as soon as it goes through the sensor, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
So when you do a raw external recording, it goes into the sensor and then it comes out to that and gives you the absolute raw hardware output from what you're recording,
I see. Cool. Cool. Excellent.
to give a really unnecessarily complex answer to
Well,
your
you know
simple
what?
question.
We like science on this stream, so I am all about it. You and Real Chibi can go off on that stuff all you want. Neoteny, actually, I'm writing a PDF of this because I'm doing a video, or I'm starting a photo, or sorry, an email coaching tier on my Patreon soon, and part of it is giving them a PDF that tells them about how to make better photos of their miniatures. So I just went through yesterday and actually photographed a model with all different backdrops and light settings so that I could show people the differences. But to give a short answer to your question, it usually is a medium gray, just like this construction paper I've got. The less color shift, the better. So don't go for a greenish or a bluish gray. If you can, go for as neutral a gray as you can. But also, it depends on the color of your mini. This model is really pale, so I would actually use a light gray instead. But in general, I find that grays are better. Um, some really dark models, like David has an Abaddonn, which is a Games Workshop Chaos Marine. He's very, very dark. And David can photo that thing. They can't photo it really to get a great result on anything but a black backdrop. And that's an exception. That is usually not going to be the case unless you have a very, very dark mini. There we go. We've got some rosettes, guys. Just dabbing little strokes.
Actually, Nomad, that's been a common joke in the photography world. It's an often thrown around, uh, I guess, widely accepted pun that makes people go kind of, they cringe, but they expect it these days. Like, you can buy shirts from professional photographers that say like, I shoot raw, or I only do raw, or and it's they all have the same implication, you know. So
They're just
it's
trying to be funny.
correct, but it seems that even Annie Leibovitz herself makes jokes like that.
Oh yeah, I
Although
totally.
she cares less about the actual technical side of stuff,
Yeah,
which I
she's.
can completely admire. Like, she's outsourced. Hey, I don't care what camera you use. This is what I'm trying to capture, and you need to help me capture it the best I can. She knows about cameras, but she doesn't get caught up on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is
I,
cool.
however, would say that I am less creative and more the tinkerer tech person,
You're a
because I'd
nerd.
like to. I'm a
You're a
nerd,
camera
yes, very
nerd.
much so.
Yep, Justin the camera nerd. He needs a camera nerd emote now. There we go. We got some spots. Spots. Now, we have a lightbox Chewy, but I almost don't use it as for anything except to prop up my backdrop. It's sad to say. I mean, and if you're on my Patreon, yeah, I mean, I might do a little thing on this. Right now, the PDF is going to be mostly for people who decide to join and do the coaching. Because in order for me to coach you effectively, I need to get good pictures of your stuff. So me helping you get good pictures is good. But I honestly find a light box is not necessary unless you have very intense lights. I think that, moving your lights farther back or apart is actually just as good of a solution. Or you can get some white satin from a fabric store and just kind of make your own little hoodies. Just drape it over your lights when you're using them. That works too. I've done that in the past. I honestly did not own a light box up until the time I moved here to California, which was a month ago. And now I have one, but I still really don't use it. I go for simple setups that have diffused light that I can control. And I just, the softbox isn't really necessary with the lights I control because I'm using LED lights and I can adjust the level of them. So since I can adjust the intensity of my light, I don't need a fabric to do that. So yeah, I can't really give an opinion on softboxes for that reason. Like, I've never really found one. The problem is that, you need a big enough one for big models. But then a big one can kind of make your small models get lost in it. And if you go for smaller, then you can't take photos of big stuff. I don't know. They limit you, I think. I'd rather just have a shelf backed with paper with lamps attached to it that I can, move further away or closer as I need to. That was my photo setup for a decade, actually. Was just a bookshelf, an empty bookshelf with lamps clamped to it that I would just drape satin over the front if I needed it. And done. It was done. So you can do very, very easy, simple, effective photo setups. Once you experiment, you kind of know what you want to be able to do with your lights. So, yeah, see? Same thing, Crispies. Yeah, I just don't... I tried out the light box, but I really want my lights in... And when you're photoing miniatures, you want your light kind of in front of the model, because you want to be able to light it up. And you also want a ground light in front of the model that's going to light up your undersides and reduce your shadows. And that essentially just completely defeats the point of a light box. Why would you even need one at that point? You're not even using it. And that's what I found with ours, is I'm just using it to prop up backdrops, really. Well, yeah, right. And you know what? When I do a quick photo, I use my desk and a sheet of paper too, because as you can see, my light here is really nice and even. Like, it's even over the whole model. You're not getting, a stronger light from one end than the other. You're getting, a nice diffused light. You're not getting any hot spots at all. And when you've got that, I could take a great photo of this miniature. I just put down a lighter gray or a light blue backdrop, and I could get a good photo of it. So yeah, there we go. We got our... I'm going to get down to a more friendly level. But there's my medium gray that I normally take photos on. But you can see it makes this model look lighter. So if I flip this up, because I have several papers underneath, and now you can see him, but you can see how using the blue backdrop has shifted him more toward green, right? So this is what I mean with cameras, except for the very best ones. The color, and putting any color in your backdrop is going to cause shift that you have to adjust for later. If you don't want to adjust for shift later and you want to get just a pretty good photo out of the can, just use gray of various types. Hold on while I adjust a bit here, and then I'm going to put a glaze over these leopard spots. And then I think we'll be done. Yeah, yeah. You had the perfect, yeah, and that's just it. Is like, you know, your mileage may vary. Some people use softboxes to great effect, but I've honestly found that I don't really need them to get a good photo. And sometimes it doesn't make sense for miniatures. Well, and we to be fair, right, we photo really odd things, right? We're photoing little people and animals and dragons and real dioramas and things that, you know, usually, you know, not unusual stuff. So, yeah, that's partially why we're so weird. But, all right, so what I did here was I mixed a white glaze, and you can't see it because it's so thin that it's colored water. I decided I was a little strong on my spots, and I wanted to knock them down a bit. So I'm going to put a white glaze over this whole thing. I'm going to paint it on super fast over the whole area. It's really colored water. You can see it trying to pool. I don't want that. You never want it to pool if it's a glaze because it's broken, and it will dry in artifacts, leave rings. So that's why I brush it on really thin. But that should lighten my spots a little bit. See them? Now they're not so stark. Interesting, huh? So pale glazes are kind of hard to use because they are really fraught with peril. If you screw them up, you can leave brush marks all over the place. And they're hard to get to the right consistency because you do have to like thin them beyond their life. But put them on if you want to fade in a pattern like this, if you want it to be more subtle. Oh, well, bye Zero, back to work. And thank you, Stiletto Assassin, for the comment. He or she, I guess it is a she. The Spirit Beast is coming along very nicely. I wanted spots, and now I have spots. And I may, you know, if I wanted to, if also I thought my spots were getting too much and I wanted to minimize them, I could also thin down some white and do some more fur, but real subtle fur up against the spots, against the edges, to kind of make them brush it into them. But again, that's kind of titchy. The glaze actually works just as well, I think. So like if I was going to do that, I would just kind of maybe do a little bit of brushing white over the edges of these spots to break them up a little bit more with real fine strokes. But this is getting so little now that it's hard. Hard to do this without really interrupting your spotty border that you spent so much time on. So could do that just to lighten it just a little bit. So we got Rosettes. No, that one's a little blurfy. Let's tackle that blurfy one. It's a little bit blotchy. There. Breaking up the silhouette a little bit more. Now it's a little less blurfy. Blurf. Yes, blurf is one of my favorite words. I blurf regularly. All good painters blurf regularly. Alrighty. And there. And I need to thin my purple a bit more if I don't want more blurfs. So the fun thing is, of course, that all of these colors currently on this model were mixed with just, you know, like 2 main hues. It's all coming from the same root, and then just with some black and some white, which is cool. I like that when you can get variants of colors just by using like 2 main colors. I think I'm gonna put one more glaze on. I want to show you guys how thin a white glaze is. This is my white glaze, and even so, it started to evaporate. But white glaze, like, is nothing. Like, it is really colored water, and that's why you never ever want it to pool. Not ever. It's so thin that you can barely see it except when it's pooling. And the reason for this is like you don't want artifacts, but you want it to very subtly shift the surface. And I would rather build up 3 layers of white glaze than put 1 layer of white down that's way too strong and wipes out all my work. So, and you can just paint it over in a really thin layer and not let it pool at all. Just kind of paint it on really fast with your brush. You don't want to, you don't want to stroke back over an area after you've put white down on it. So that's why I'm moving very fast and trying to do it while everything's still wet, and I didn't go back to touch up this area while it was drying. Because if you touch the glaze while it's drying, you can strip it up. So now I have made my spots more ghostly and subtle by glazing white over them. And the other effect of glazing this white is that I blended in my fur brush strokes so they're even softer. And I've also brought up my shadow color a little bit so that now my underlying white looks even paler. So good side effects of my glaze as well. So there you go, guys. We got some leopard spots going on. He's pretty cool, actually. I want to finish up some of this fur next time. I think I want to base the horse's legs, or the deer legs. I don't call them horse legs. Dark. Kind of get this back part figured out. So we'll go back to Spirit Beast on Monday. Maybe we'll base coat the horns too. And we'll try to get to wings next week as well. So yeah, so we're going to be doing animals and stuff, but as you can see, I mean, today I talked about color theory, muted and saturated colors, glazing, painting white, and doing leopard spots. So it's never just one thing while we are painting all this. I guess it is deer hoofs because he's got that little toe coming down. And general animal patterns also. So even though my subject matter may look simple, the fact that this guy has so many textures and that we're using such interesting colors on him makes every show pretty much have 5 subjects. Hey Glenn, thank you for the 3-month sub. Fantastic. Yeah, deer feet, they're cloven. I'm still gonna paint them like horse feet, because why not? I can do whatever I want. This is why you should never tell your kids they have to paint their models a particular way. They should just paint them however they want. Yeah. So lots of stuff. I have a little bit more cleanup to do down here too on these. I can see a mold line. So we'll have to fix that. But there is our spirity beast. So Justin, do we have a raid?
We do actually, and it comes at a suggestion from John himself. He pointed out the Board Game Geek people, or
Yeah.
TV, I should say, not, but it is people. They just went live, so
Oh,
we're gonna check out what they're doing. Little change from what we're used to reading.
Yeah, well, it's Friday. We can have a change. That's cool. Excellent. All right. Well, if you got that queued up, awesome, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you all on Monday. And yeah, paint cool stuff this weekend. See you later. Bye-bye.
Next show today will be at 3 o'clock p.m. Central Time, roughly 2 hours from now. Super Eco. So hopefully we can see you guys then. That'll be Reaperland, and then it starts a whole chain of programming. We've got Reaperland into Bones 5 Live into Reaper Errant. So look forward to a whole bunch of fun stuff with you guys. Thank you for stopping by today. Keep being awesome, and don't forget to use those Reaper Raid emojis when you head on over into this nice channel of theirs. So thank you guys.